All right, so welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Catherine Wygant Fawcett, the Executive Director of the Institute for Family-Owned Business, otherwise known as IFOB. We have Brooke Stewart here as our Director of Communications, who will be running things behind the scenes here with our chat and our this and that. I want to thank KeyBank for being our title sponsor, and thank you to Maine HR Convention and Maine Biz for sponsoring us as well. We've muted everyone and we've turned off your video so we can focus on Dennis and his presentation, but when we get into chats and things, we may bring you all back on so we can see you. We'll be recording this program for later viewing. We'll also share the slides after the program, and Dennis has some great handouts that he can send to you as well. We want to make this as interactive as possible, so please send any questions or things that you have in the chat. Towards the end of the program, we'll be giving you a survey, and we'd love to have you please fill that out because that's how we build our programs and how we got here today with Dennis. So as many of you know, the IFOB is a nonprofit that helps family businesses succeed. We have a lot of programs that we've added this year, and as we were just chatting, we hope to open up later in the fall. And we also work with CEOs, we work with women in family business, we work with the next generation, and the next generation asked us to do a program for their parents. So we have the leaders in transition too. So we have a lot of fun with that. We were just saying our next program is our Tuesday Talks, next Tuesday, May 18th. And we're gonna be talking about virtual selling and what that looks like. And Andrea here is on the call. She'll be hosting that for us. So we'll be talking about best tips for selling in a virtual environment. What have you learned over the past year, whether you're doing the selling or being sold to? So, and Dennis said he'll pop in with us too, so we can have an extended conversation about that. So our next legal lunches, which is what we were also talking about, is July 21st, Hit Me With Your Best Shot. We'll have Laura Rideout, partner from Pretty Flaherty, to give us her best practices. And then we'll have Jean Ginn Marvin, the innkeeper at the Nonantum Resort, to give her perspective from the hospitality industry. You can register at fanbusiness.org, or you can put a message to Brooke in the chat and she'll sign you up. And nominations are open now for our 21st Maine Family Business Awards. If you know a family business, please recognize them, nominate them. They don't need to be a member of the IFOB to participate. If they complete the application, they get 2 free tickets to the awards, and they get a complimentary membership to the Institute as well. So those will be open until June 25th. And on October 6th, we get to come out and play and see everybody in person, which would be lovely. So, and it'll be live like the Oscars. So today we have Dennis Boyle, the president of Seacoast Sales Solution, joining us to share his sales techniques. Seacoast DX is a consulting firm specializing in providing fractional VP of sales and CCO services to small and medium-sized firms. Dennis has over 25 years of experience with large corporations, and his experience includes both sales and marketing. And he's got a handy presentation for us today. So I'll invite our sponsors up to say a few words. Do we have Jason Myers back on with us? Okay. Brooke, do we have Jason?
No, Jason is not on.
Okay, so Jason had to take the kids to the school bus, so he might come back later today. So I'll turn it over to you, Katie Jones.
Good. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Brooke, for having me today. We are so grateful to sponsor your organization and the how-to series. You have such thoughtful, wonderful programming for organizations. And I know we get so much value out of being members of IFOB. So thank you for this opportunity. You guys are in for a treat with Dennis today. I've had a chance to chat with him over the last 30 minutes. You're going to have a lot of fun. And if there's anyone here that was attending the Maine HR Convention this week, it's great to see you. I know we offered a extra bonus of a pass this morning. So thanks for taking advantage of that. And we'll see you tomorrow for the last day of the convention.
Okay, and now we'll toss it to you, Dennis.
Thanks, guys. I think that Katie is most excited about being on here because she can then keep me in the corral if I say anything that's off color or wrong or whatever. Anyway, my name is Dennis Boyle. Thank you everybody for coming. Thanks for the sponsors and thanks for the Institute for having me on. I'm going to need to, oh, here we go. Sorry. So here's kind of the agenda for today. I'm going to go through the presentation. We're also going to have one breakout session. The goal here is, and you've probably been on a number of these presentations. I am not going to read every slide. I am not going to bore you to death. Everybody's zoomed out. My goal here is that you walk out, whether it's from points that I've brought up or in the breakout session, with 4 to 5 really good things that you can bring back and use within your organization. Feel free at any time. If there's a question that you have, this is an interactive presentation. The value that we bring is answering your questions when you have them. So put it in the chat or just come off mute and say, hey, Dennis, excuse me, I got a question, and let's do that. My promise to you is this is not a selling and groveling event where I'm going to talk about myself. This is truly about getting you some information. And I will tell you that I've given about, well, the first half of the presentation I've given probably 10 times. The rest of it is information that I've learned from companies like yours that I'm going to share with you. So this is, I've gathered a lot of information on questions that I hear from small to medium-sized businesses. And this is what I want to share with you that I think is going to provide some value. If you have questions for me after it, my email is right here. It's dboyle@salesacceleration.com. The second to last part is this. Any presentation, the value of the presentation is on the content that you receive and how easy the presenter makes it for you. So you don't have to take notes if you don't want, except for those 4 or 5 things that you think are important to your business. You'll get this presentation, and I can send you 2 real good ebooks afterward if you email me. That will be helpful. Your part is, be engaged, ask questions. If I do see you pecking on your phone, I will ask you a question, guaranteed. So without further ado, just, again, my name is Dennis Boyle. I have Seacoast Sales Solutions. What I do is I help small to medium-sized businesses build systems and infrastructure to drive revenue growth using what I call sales Moneyball tactics and strategies. If you've ever seen the movie Moneyball, what it's about is the analytics behind baseball and how to drive correct decisions based upon facts and not conjecture. So I have a system that I use, which is typically through your CRM, if you have one, to make decisions and drive towards sales where you're going to be most successful. So that's what I do. Here are the topics we're going to go through. And by the way, we're going to try to get this done in about 50 minutes to leave room. If you have other areas here, besides some of the main topics that I think are of value, that companies have come back to me and said are valuable, just write a note down and let's, at the end in Q&A, I'm glad to answer them. Also, if we do carry over and there are people who have further questions, I'm glad to stay longer. I want to make sure that you walk away, that you're comfortable with what you can do in your plan of attack at your company. So we're going to go through building the virtual sales team, how to virtually onboard a team, how to sell virtually, some technology tips that I can give you to help you as you're working in a virtual environment. We're going to have a quick breakout where you can share some ideas, and then questions and adjournment. Any questions so far? Any items that I may have missed as we've kind of queued this all up? Okay, so let me make a quick statement, right? In 2020, the business world changed, as we all know, due to COVID-19. Companies were forced to alter employee engagement, how they reach customers, and virtual engagement quickly took the forefront. Studies have shown that those firms who did not pivot lost between 20 and 50% of revenue. It is unclear how business will change when the pandemic ends. This presentation is what I bring together, what I've learned, what has proven to be valuable to SMBs as you consider your reopening options going forward. And maybe that's already happened. But right now is the time when you need to think about this stuff. So let's start first with building and managing a virtual sales team. So here's the overview of what I want to talk about. And this, by the way, is even before COVID. Here's kind of what was happening with small to medium-sized businesses. By 2020, half of full-time employees are expected to be working virtually. And then also, what are the difference in planning activities to engage with a virtual sales team? Let me say this another way. For many years, sales groups have been virtual, have been remote. But now it's not just about sales, it's about your entire company. You're probably thinking about, what do I do? Do I come back with a hybrid model? Do I close a facility and have everybody virtual? What is it that I can do? So, this isn't just about a model that you can have in place for sales. This might be a model that you can put in place for a virtual company. So here are 4 other things too to consider and why this is important. How can I attract employees? I interview and with firms, I hire a lot of people. The number one thing that people ask now of me is, what is their model post-COVID? Can I work at home 3 days a week, or out of my home office? These are things you need to consider. The second most important thing is, this is not just about these thoughts and comments and the presentation. It isn't just about what you do. That isn't the most important point. The most important point is, what do your clients expect? Will they accept a virtual selling model? They may or may not. You have to make that decision, but at least you'll have the tools in place to be able to make those decisions. And remember, and I'll talk about this frequently, don't put in a plan that you think is going to work without listening to your clients and customers. If it doesn't work in your industry, you need to think differently. Don't put in a virtual model when you know that they think that you should be face-to-face with them at all times. Third thing is, what's the cost and impact of virtual and outsourced sales teams? Can you save money? Is it more money? What's the cost benefit analysis there? And then also, the last thing is to consider, what is it, if I don't do anything, what's the cost to me, right? Is the competition going to gobble me up? Is the competition going to pass me? Am I going to lose sales? You have to consider those things as you look at your virtual selling model. So here's what we're going to go through. There's 7 steps to drive a sales team. And by the way, we're going to go through these fairly quickly. I'm not going to pontificate on each slide, but I'm going to give you the high points. 1, what's important with a sales team is communicating expectations. What I'm going to do is go through a particular item, and then I'm going to give you some tips on things that you can do to actually hold people accountable and drive them or implement that particular topic. So number 1, how to communicate. How do you conduct virtual meetings? Number 3, how to create a library of resources. If you're remote and people aren't in the office, you have to be really good at educating them and having resources available to them, whatever those are. Number 4, how to reward their efforts. Number 5, how to maintain consistency. Number 6, my favorite, with that sales money ball thing that I talked about, how to metric and monitor people effectively if you're remote. And then the tips from the pros, not this pro, Dennis Boyle, but pros from companies who have given me some tips and things that they've learned that I thought would be valuable to share with you. So let's go to the first thing. I would ask anybody, and I'm going to open up for the first question. How do you currently communicate your expectations to your sales team? What do you have in place that you do? Anybody, don't make me pick on you, Catherine. There must be something that people have to communicate expectations. Catherine, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Come back on.
Okay.
I'm a sales team, so I have to communicate with myself.
Yeah. So Catherine, quick question for you. So, let me ask you a quick question. Do you think it's better for a team that you have at the Institute where you tell them afterward what the expectations are, or you tell them beforehand with a clearly designed plan on what you expect them to have and what they should be driving off of? And do you think that's more or less important in a virtual or non-virtual environment where you don't see them every day?
I think it's clear regardless. People need to know where they're going. They need a roadmap.
Good. So this is, in any virtual environment, if you're going to take home one item that is the most important thing that you can do, otherwise everything else caves in upon itself, is if you decide to go virtual with the rules and regulations and how you want your sales team or organization to proceed, you need to make sure that you put this down in writing. So how do you do that? Each rep within your organization, look at the bottom of the slide. Number 1, they should have a territory management system in place where you clearly agree upon what is expected. I can tell you this, when someone is remote and they're not in the office every day, having them and managing their expectations in a written format is very important. Second thing is have a performance management system in place. So if you're in HR or have anything that's touching HR, you know that the most important thing is, besides an individual plan, is what is it that you expect from a qualitative and quantitative perspective for each employee within your organization. I always tell people that, so this is, as you set up their expectations for the year and clearly communicate it, at the end of the year, when you review performance should not be surprises. Performance communicated clearly on the front end should be a restatement of the facts and what has been accomplished throughout that year. The best performance management systems, if you sit down with an employee and communicate it effectively, you should both be aligned as to what has been done and what hasn't been done. So number one, make sure you're communicating effectively. Number two, so this says conduct virtual meetings, right? So everybody's doing that now, but what can you do with a regular meeting, and what are the do's and don'ts in a meeting? So if I'm at a meeting virtually and I'm the sales leader or I'm the president of the company and you see me looking at my phone all the time, what do you think? And do you think that person's engaged in that meeting? Probably not. So typically what I like to do is, when I work with companies on virtual meetings, here's some tips. Number one, pretend you're in person and get the distractions away. When I hold a sales meeting, phones are in the middle of the table and they're off. That's not a time that they need to worry about any messages. They need to collaborate with their team. So set up rules and what you do at your virtual meetings. Make them accountable to that plan. Make it a place to share ideas and engage, right? There shouldn't be distractions. I don't know about you. I mean, this stuff happens, right? Where you have a dog that barks in the background or whatever. But when you're within your own company and those things happen, I think people cut you a little bit of slack. When you're in front of a client and those things happen, I don't think that they accept it as much. Just my thought there. But in front of a client, be professional, have virtual meetings, and make sure you hold to a plan. The last thing is technology. I'm almost embarrassed that I even have to say this, but how many times do you go on a virtual meeting and someone, you can't hear them, they're on mute, they don't know how to use the technology, and they're blurred and you can't even really see them? Make sure your people have the technology, because remember, it's not just what you're sharing with them when you meet with them, it's what they're sharing and how they are visible in front of a client. That's the most important thing. Make sure they have those tools and they themselves know how to conduct and lead a virtual meeting. Number three, create a library of collateral. So if you're virtual, you need to have, whether it's on a shared drive, there's a lot of different formats that you can use, right? With your sales team or with your company, make sure they have the tools so they don't have to ask you in a virtual environment. There's a library to get that. So what are some examples, let's say, with a sales team? Make sure you consider some of the following, right? Where are the tools for the onboarding and ongoing training that you're going to have? That's a big thing. Number two, do you have a sales playbook and a standard operating procedures or a sales operating procedures manual? This is their playbook. This is their information. And why is this important? A library of collateral, one of the top things that I hear from companies when they've gone virtual is they say, the leaders of the company say, I spend all day like a babysitter answering questions on where people can find certain things. 25 to 30% of executives find that they're doing that type of work on a daily basis. That's a complete and utter waste of time. Make sure you set up your library, set up these types of things, and integrate that with your CRM with apps and tools for increased effectiveness. I'm going to add one other comment on these types of tools. There's a lot of work to be done when you do that at the beginning, but here's the thing. If you implement a tool that doesn't long-term save you time and money, then you're wasting time with that tool. So I'm not saying spend a lot of money or time to implement these things. I'm saying spend the time to do it, as long as it's saving time down the road and making everybody more effective. What I find and what I hear from companies in a virtual environment and selling is that they had a lot of trouble, that infamous word pivoting. They had a lot of trouble pivoting to virtual because they didn't have the systems in place to become more effective in front of the client. Make sure you're able to do that. Let me just stop here for 1 second. Any questions so far? Are we on track? Do these things make sense? I'll take that as a yes and an A+ on my effort. Number 4, what's important even more, certainly with a sales organization and in a virtual sales organization, I'm making an assumption that you have, if you're paying your reps, let's say, like what most people do, a base salary and then they get a quota, or they have a variable compensation piece. It's really important when you're virtual to appreciate and reward efforts in other ways. Ad hoc types of things. Do things for them to let them know that they're appreciated, they're doing the right thing. And also consider, again, at the bottom of the slide, if you set up a comp plan that's realistic and customized by individual for a virtual environment, there are some different things you need to consider there. Number 2, and always with their variable comp plan and motivating people through these types of spiffs and programs, if you're not getting them, if they don't say they're motivated, or you're not getting your sales results, and you need to consider if that's the plan that's working, right? Ultimately, you want them to drive revenue growth, and these types of comp plans are efficient. If they're not working, you're not going to get the sales. You need to rethink it. So another tip that I would tell you is make sure you're flexible in changing your comp plans and variable comp plans and how you motivate your companies in a virtual environment. And also, what are the different things that you do in a virtual environment? Let me give you some examples. There are companies, when they hold their monthly sales meeting, just to get a sales roundup. How did we do? What's going on? Companies, one company, a recruiter I work with, they send craft beers to their sales team, Friday at 5 o'clock, just to have a little bit of fun. Another company was sending lobsters out, lobster dinners. Now, you don't necessarily have to do this every month, but I think you get the point. Let them feel like, even though you're not seeing them every single day, or you don't want to see them every day, that you're still there for them and you're doing some small things for them to make them feel appreciated. Small things like that, a lot of times amount to a better motivating factor than them just getting their reaching their quota. And then also their non-cash motivating options to consider. So again, number 4, appreciate their efforts. Number 5, consistency. Consistency within the organization and within different team members, and not constantly changing the rules, is really, really important and will increase your productivity. And it's more important in a virtual environment. People want to know what their plan is, like I talked about before. Have you be consistent and drive the plan without rules being changed along the way. And also, again, I've come back to this training, consistency, how they operate, all the tools that they have, the library that they have. If you do training or onboarding the right way, that's going to be where you set the stage and you really can have an impact with people. So make sure your training, again, and I've already said it a few times, is really appropriate and is good to manage those people. The other thing too, at sales meetings, ensure each meeting encompasses some type of new learning experience. Training is not a one-time thing. It's an everyday type of thing. If they're not learning and they're not feeling that they're getting the support, which is what training really is, they're not going to be motivated. I mentioned earlier in the presentation that one of the things that people ask about, that I hear all the time, is what is their policy on remote, etc. Number 2 on that list is, how do they train me and what's the ongoing training for me to get better, and not only in my current job, but for future jobs. If you're not considering that within your organization, just know I'm hearing that that's a very important thing that people want to have as an employee of a company. Number 6, keeping them motivated. I like to think that sales leaders should be cheerleaders. I talked a little bit about this, have SPIFs, which are special payment incentive for fast sales. By the way, I didn't know that SPIF was an acronym. I thought it was just another incentive program, and I did find that it isn't actually an acronym. So think about spiffs. This slide is also a little, it's just really reinforcing motivation. Motivation isn't just about a known incentive. It is about unknown and unplanned spiffs. So said another way, reps, what I used to say, and well, actually what a rep said to me when I was running a medical device company, they said, Dennis, we'd like to come to your sales meetings a lot because we know that something new is going to be put on our plate to motivate us to go sell more. I thought that was pretty cool and it was a good learning experience. So always mix it up. Excuse me, do something for your reps every time to keep them motivated at every meeting. Okay. Number 7, one of my favorites that when I was a sales rep, I didn't like this, but as a sales manager and having run a few companies, consistent monitoring is really, really important. So what does that mean? From an executive's perspective, what I hear a lot is that executives say, you know, Dennis, I like your ideas about a virtual environment. As a matter of fact, in a lot of ways, we don't have any choice. We've got to do it. But I'm really worried about that. What I can't see means that, you know, people are acting badly or not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So what I recommend, besides an upfront clear delineation of performance, you know, I call that a management scorecard. So sit down with them and say, here's what we expect. And then make sure you monitor that. As I mentioned before, their performance shouldn't be a guessing game at the end of the year. It should be you two both sitting down and restating the facts. But along the way, you have to make sure you do 2 things. One, probably quarterly, you sit down with each rep and you say, how are we doing? What can I do to help you? Make it a 2-way street. And then the last thing is make sure that within your sales process, they're very disciplined to that, right? That they're following the process that you've put in place for them to be successful. And make sure that you metric that. You know, I say to a lot of companies, and I'd say to anybody, and you know, if anybody wants to answer it, it'd be great. You know, if you do this right and you're monitoring people correctly and you have the right process in place and they know exactly where they're going to do. If you ask a sales rep, what are your numbers? And what I mean by that is, how many leads do you have, do you need to get that lead to X number of sales in X amount of time that equates to X amount of business? A good sales rep knows how many top of funnel leads they need and how much money that will mean in their pocket on average. If they know that, they don't need monitoring, right? They're driving that. But you should ask them that. You should ask them, because that will tell you if they know their business well enough and are driving their business the way you expect them to drive their business. This gives you, this number 7 for an executive, this is your peace of mind. This means that your reps are driving the right way and your sales leaders, so that you can rest easy at night and not have to worry on the 29th of each month, are we going to make payroll based upon the sales that we have, right? So you do this right, that eliminates that problem. So here's kind of the conclusion. If you recruit the right way, you plan, you put in good training, you document that, you manage them right from arm's length, but hold them accountable. As Ronald Reagan said many years ago about the Soviets, I'm going to trust you as long as you verify every day what we've asked you to do. So trust but verify, right? They have to earn that. And once they earn that, that environment, a virtual environment, is going to be one that they thrive in. I did a survey once with a company that had 200 reps. And they told me 3 things. I asked them one question. I said, tell me the 3 things that make a manager a good manager in sales. And they told me the following, and it was about, well, not all of them said this, but about 75 to 80% of the people said these 3 things. Number 1, tell me what I need to do and tell me how much money I can make. Number 2, when I need you, be there. Number 3, I don't want to hear from you otherwise. In other words, trust me that I'll get the job done, but be there if I've got a problem that I need to solve. Pretty interesting feedback. So when you do these things that I've talked about in setting up your virtual sales team and you get that, those are the building blocks that will help you drive a virtual sales team. So here's just a few final tips. And these are from companies. that they gave me. So just a few that I thought I'd throw out, and maybe this will help you. Make sure you hire sales reps who have worked in a virtual environment. I know that sounds almost silly that you think most reps have. A lot of them haven't. There are a lot of industries where they go to the office every day and they sell from their desk. So virtual selling, you need to have that profile because they need to understand what that means. Make sure your hiring process is done the right way to get these people. I don't know what your hiring process is. What I always recommend is the environment right for them? Have they done this before? How you're doing assessments, whether it's through interviewing or a PI or a PXT assessment? Are you asking those questions to minimize your risk in your hiring process to make sure you're getting that right person? Number 3, don't ask them to be virtual and have them limp along without the right tools. I'm not suggesting that they have like a production studio like I have in my office now, with lights and everything else and backgrounds and green screens and everything, but not at that level. But make sure that they have the right tools, because remember, what they show you in front of them and what they show you in front of a client is very telling to me. They should still be professional if right, and make sure that they're doing the right things when they're and presenting themselves in front of you and thus in front of the clients. Client told me once that what I see with some of my people when they show up for a virtual meeting with me means they're probably doing the same dumb things with my clients, and I can't stand for that, right? So this is going to foreshadow and tell if they're doing it. Make sure that you have, maybe it's in your policies and procedures. What is our virtual culture and environment look like? I never thought that you'd have to have in your company employee manual what virtual means and what your expectations are, but this is the time that you should probably make sure that you do that. Number 5, and this is an interesting one, be accessible. So what that means is, let me give you some examples. So, virtual does not mean that you're available. So what a lot of sales leaders and companies are doing, they're doing things once a week. They have an open mic where, let's say Monday from 8 to 12 in the morning, they do nothing else but sit in their office and they're accessible to their sales team to make sure that they can get questions answered. This is beyond just a text or whatever. This is where you may have to talk to them for a while. Do things like that to make sure you're always accessible, because they're going to expect it. That may even mean on weekends, early morning, later at night after dinner. The next one is promote work-life integration. I think everybody is probably, most concerned about that. But what does that mean for your organization? That doesn't mean you check out on Monday and you're golfing every Monday. That just means that you've defined what that means. You appreciate what their needs are and find that balance. Personalize their virtual experience. Everybody's virtual experience is different, so be aware of that. And then last thing is, and I think it's important, ask for their feedback. Are we on track? Does this make sense? Is this good for you? Where have we missed? Always with a sales organization, one last tip I'll give you, and probably say it 5 more times in the rest of the presentation. I find it's a very effective tactic, no matter what you do with a salesperson, sales leader, or even within your own organization. Don't dictate what you think should be done. Say, are we on track? What else would you add? It doesn't mean you're going to, but you're asking for their feedback and ownership of that process or that issue to make sure you gain agreement. So, any questions on the first part of the presentation? I can't be doing that well. There's got to be at least 1 or 2 out there. Any chats, Catherine? If not, I'll just continue on.
Brooke?
No questions so far in the chat.
Okay, so let's now talk about, you've kind of set up the environment for your sales team. And then one of the key things about whether even before COVID or if you're virtual or not is onboarding. Let me throw a statistic out to you that I thought was interesting to me. There's a guy at the Harvard Business School. His name is Frank Cespedes. He's the first person to teach classes in sales for their MBA students. He started 4 years ago. So up until 4 years ago, the Harvard Business School, if you got an MBA there, you had no formal sales training. Frank came in from the corporate environment. He's a professor there. He's a great resource for me. And he did a study. And he said the following. I'm going to summarize it. And it was a great case study. He looked at over 500 companies. And he looked at retention of people in a sales leadership role. So let's say sales manager, sales director, sales VP. And he found out that the average tenure for those roles was 15 months. So let me back into this number, which I thought was pretty shocking. So 500 companies said that they changed their sales leader or sales manager every 15 months. Here's the real bad part about that, besides the cost. If you're changing a sales leader every 15 months, and then you know or learn from recruiters that the average time to find a new sales executive, let's say a VP of sales, is 9 months. So what does that mean? When you hire a new person, let's say it's January 1st of 2021, if they're going to leave within 6 months, because it takes another 9 months to hire somebody new, within 6 months, they have already made the decision, or you have made the decision that that was the wrong decision. So within 6 months, they come in and say, oh my God, this really wasn't what I signed up for. Or you say, this isn't what we thought we were getting. We need to relook. And you're behind the scenes. If you don't fire that person, you are keeping them on board and you're looking for somebody else. So that paints the picture. The number one reason, or actually two reasons, why people leave a job in that amount of time or get fired is for two reasons. One, they weren't onboarded correctly, or two, the sales structure and what was built within that company is not in place. In other words, they come in and they say, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know what this company is doing. They haven't trained me properly and onboarded me to really integrate me in the company. Or two, they say as a sales leader, I've got a mess to clean up and it's going to take me 6 to 9 months to do it before I can really start making some variable compensation. So this would lead you to the assumption that onboarding is a pretty critical thing. So let's talk a little bit about onboarding, how you can onboard better, some things that you can do to eliminate that problem. Number one, here's kind of the summary, just some statistics. And this I will read because these are important. 54% sales onboarding increases new rep productivity. If you have a good onboarding program, their productivity from day one will increase 54%. So what does that mean? What's the translation? The translation is if you have a good sales training program, and I'm not saying this should be 2 months, it should be 1 week or less, maybe 3 or 4 days maximum. If you do that right, your salesperson or your sales leader will be getting 54% more sales within 60 days than the person who's onboarded incorrectly. There's a real quantifiable, measurable, you train them well and you onboard them well and make them feel loved, they're going to get on the board and running quickly. Okay, 6.6% onboarding moves the needle. So sales onboarding can improve win rates by 14% and quota attainment by 6.6%. What this really means is, and another translation, if you onboard correctly, they're going to get out and win more deals. If you can win 14% more deals just by telling them what they should be doing, that's big number in sales. Let me give you another perspective. In the sales world, on average, an all-star person across multiple industries will close about 1/3 of the leads they get in if they're really, really good. Statistics also show that someone who's completely incompetent, who just gets out there, can close 5% of their deals, and the average sales rep can close 25%. So let's add 14% to those numbers. If you've got an all-star who can close 33% of their deals and you train them really well, and they then close almost 50% of their deals, is that worth it to you? I would submit yes. That's a big number. So onboard correctly. 353% training is an investment worth making. For every dollar a company invests in training, they receive about a $4.53 return. That's a pretty good ROI. And then 69% sales onboarding helps retain top talent. As I mentioned before, Remember that second question that I said comes up in interviews all the time? How do they train me and how quickly can I get out in the field and make money? You're going to retain top talent. So what does that mean? The 15 months is going to be much longer than that. So these are really good statistics to keep in mind. So here are some of the things. So in onboarding, and I'm going to focus mostly on some of these quotes from people out in the field, right? So confidence is one of the great outcomes of good onboarding. When sellers are more confident in their knowledge in the product or service they're selling and the unique value the product provides customers, they'll be more successful. What I find, and let me translate that quote. What I have found when people aren't onboarded correctly, you won't hear from them for a long time. In other words, they will flail in the field. Let's assume they're remote, right? Virtual. We're talking about virtual selling. They're out in the field. You're still checking in with them and they're making excuses on their performance and you're not able to nail it down. Why not just give them an all-star onboarding program that eliminates this problem? If you don't see when you onboard a salesperson that within 30 days that they're able to handle all of the product knowledge and pitch it to a client, you haven't done a good job. No more than 30 days, they should be able to manage your value proposition and get it out and have that resonate and solve problems with your potential customers. That's how important it is. Second thing is that effectiveness, and we've talked a little bit about this, so let's just talk about ramp time and some of the other things too. You've heard me mention 30 days as when they should be fully capable of selling in the field in a virtual environment from a good onboarding program. If you don't have a checkpoint and you're not traveling with them to make sure, and that time gets on to 2 or 3 months and they're not being monitored, that ramp time is money out of your pocket and it's revenue off the top line. You need to make sure that your goal in a good onboarding program is 30 days, max 60 days, that they are fully on their own. Put systems in place to make sure you monitor that. Number 3, sales onboarding will have a huge business impact. However, the impact can be positive or negative. It all depends upon how effective the onboarding program is. So how do you know? People often ask me, so Dennis, this is great. This is really intuitive, duh, again, I get that. But what are the things that I know? What are the simple things that I can put in place to really determine if what is I put in place for my onboarding program is working? So I've given you one. Within 30 days, they should feel completely confident that they can make sales calls themselves. You should be able to role play with them, coach them, let them go on their own. By the way, let them make mistakes. That's okay. And a lot of mistakes will be made the first 30 days. Maybe even you lose a deal or two. But if the goal is to get them on their own and self-manage in a virtual environment, you want to do that. So allow them to make the mistakes. But the other things is, the other 2 things that tell you if your onboarding program is working correctly, well, a couple of things. One, they're winning deals quickly. Your reps stay with you. And here's another one that I find, especially with younger salespeople that I see. They want all their buddies to work at the same company. Companies that onboard and the reps are earning a lot of money, they come to the sales manager and say, I got a couple other people I'd love for you to talk to if positions are open for rep positions in your company. That's a great indicator, right? They know how good they have it. They want their friends and family to be involved as well. So that's a good way to determine if your onboarding program is working. The other thing too is that how you onboarded in the past doesn't work anymore. My first job, I grew up in Rochester, New York, and my first job was with the Eastman Kodak Company, which is a photographic company, as you're well aware of, probably up in Rochester. Probably 50% of the people up there worked for Kodak. My training program, when I first started, was Monday through Saturday, and it was for 3 months. You don't have that. And why don't you have that anymore? Number one, if you tell a potential salesperson, unless it's a very unique industry, you're not going to get them to come work for you if you say your training program is 3 months. Make sure that you put a program in place like I talked about, 3, 4, 5 days, right? If you need to have more, then get them out in the field, get them going, and have them back in for a half day here or there, maybe a virtual training on top of that. But don't think that how we were trained, and I'm dating myself a little bit from 28 years ago, that type of training and sitting in a chair for that amount of time works. It doesn't. We're all virtual. We're all using new technology. Make sure your training program is aligned with that and meets the needs not only of you to get your ideas and training across, but also meets the needs of folks that you're going to hire today. So Accenture reported that for every dollar a company invests in training, they receive about $4.53 in return. So what does that mean? And I mentioned this before. What that means is that Accenture and other companies have said, what is the total cost of training for us? And how quickly is the payback? So what they measured was how quickly will sales come in X amount of time to pay for that training and make it worthwhile for us to continue to train, right? I mean, training can be a big expense. Imagine the training when I was at Eastman Kodak for 3 months, how much that was. That's a lot of training, right? So you want to make sure that it meets your ROI in return. Don't just train to train to be effective. How does it drive productivity? Implementing a technology tool in the sales onboarding program can accelerate the time to competency for new reps. The end result can be a faster path to revenue. So I would just tell you generally on this, if you're not using the new technology that's out there, and I'm going to show you in this quick technology portion of the presentation, if you're not using technology, and by the way, again, I already dated myself. What I think is really cool technology, I have no clue. I usually go to my son who's 17 and say, Charlie, what is the new technology that's out there? And he'll tell me, Dad, go to this website or go here. There's a lot of great technology that you may not be well aware of as a seasoned veteran. Let's say if you're in that space, ask your people, what's the new stuff that's out there? There are plenty of companies that I could connect you to with technology and new technology to make them more effective. It's out there, use it. The new world that we're in, besides selling being different and virtual being in play, is technology. Don't think because you're 47 years old that you know all the new technology. We probably don't, right? Reach out and find out what that is. So I have a question for everybody, and hopefully someone will answer this. Can someone tell me the difference between sales and sales enablement? What does sales enablement mean? Brooke, why don't I ask you that question?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good one.
So
go ahead.
Yeah, so there's this new term now, and it evolved from technology, sales enablement. So sales enablement is the tools, processes, and things that you put in place to increase effectiveness. So a sales enablement tool, which is standard in most companies, is a customer relationship management tool or CRM, right? So that's where you can, it used to be in the old days, a CRM was almost like a database, right? You'd put in all your client information, then you could start building funnels off of it. Then you could look at intricate metrics to be able to find out where your reps close better and how that happens. And then you're able to add on, like with a Hubspot or a Salesforce or some of these larger systems, you can add on all kinds of really cool tools, proposal generation tools, quota generation tools, all kinds of things that are add-ons. You may even have something homegrown in your company that you can integrate in your CRM. Those are all sales enablement. That's what it means. It is the tools and processes and add-ons that technology can provide to make you more effective. One of the initial sales enablement tools was a cell phone, right? CRM. These are types of things. But what you can get now, there are larger companies now that just have sales enablement teams. And all they do is find new technology where it is quick to implement, saves time, saves money, makes their team more effective. And oh, by the way, these are all tools that are needed in a virtual environment. So as you onboard people, as you train them in it, whatever, a lot of the companies, what they've pivoted to is just better sales enablement to get the idea across most effectively without bringing everybody into the office or whatever. You know, a lot of training now that's done, folks will do, they have it on their portal, on their website for a sales organization, and they do it on their own time. You know, that remote learning, like we've all learned that our kids are doing in school, similar to a sales organization. A lot of great tools out there. So if you want more information on sales enablement, leave me a message on the email that I left, and I can send you to a couple really, there's an organization called the Sales Enablement Society that you can Google. That's a great resource where they just trade ideas on all these really cool tools and things that you can get to make your sales organization virtually more effective. So how do you get started, right? The ultimate goal of onboarding is to be effective, get them out in the field. But, you know, what is it that you would do for your you know, to structure that? So organizations with robust onboarding programs are 15 times more likely to have reps who generate pipeline faster. So we've talked about this, don't want to belabor the point, but it's important that you track the progress, right, after onboarding and get feedback. We've talked about it a couple of times, make sure you do it. So how do we efficiently now take, so we have brought them on board, and then how do you, the third part here in the program is, how do you efficiently sell remotely? So I'm going to stop here before this and just again ask anybody, any questions or chats that you wanted to go through before we go into this final part, and give you some tools and things to think about in a virtual sales environment. Okay, so let's talk about something, and I'm going to ask a question at the end of this slide. So there are outside salespeople and inside salespeople. So inside sales is interesting because it can help with productivity. It improves and it bridges between internal and external sales. It can help with managing other opportunities or helping with opportunities. And a lot of times in the new virtual environment, it's what the clients want. So I have two questions for you guys. One is, what's the difference between inside sales and remote selling? And is there a difference? Does anybody want to tackle that? So inside sales predominantly, before COVID, before kind of this virtual environment of selling, inside sales typically would serve as an adjunct or an additional service for the outside salesperson. So they might be the inside salesperson might have, let's say, 2 or 3 tasks predominantly. One, maybe lead gen. Number 2, supporting the reps in the field. And 3, with customers or potential customers, providing literature, follow-up, and support, really is a hand-holding type of thing. But here's the issue. Inside sales now, everybody could be considered to be an inside salesperson because they're not in front of the client. So you have to determine in your organization whether your salespeople and something that you could consider, and maybe it's a pivot, or maybe you stay where you are. Is our inside salesperson going to be that type of collaboration with the outside salesperson? And the question you have to answer is our product a product that can be sold or not sold, where we need to have somebody face-to-face in the field? Some products, no. I mean, look at, for instance, if you're buying something off Amazon, Amazon isn't a face-to-face sell. You just go and you know what you want, or you investigate something, or go to Consumer Reports and say, I've got a couple of choices, and you just buy it on Amazon. Most companies are not like that. You need to figure out, do I still need inside salespeople? Do I not? Is it going to, are my sales reps face-to-face in the field with my clients? What is it that's best for you? So you need to think about that and decide, because in some organizations, this becomes redundant, where their inside salespeople are doing the same thing as the outside salespeople, and maybe you just have them all as salespeople. Just something to consider as you're setting up your organization. Here's some statistics. 70% of clients do not want to meet salespeople anymore. That's kind of shocking to me. I actually did some research on that, and lo and behold, yeah, this index showed that clients don't need. So again, getting back to it, for you to be effective, the bottom line, you have to determine, do they want to see me or not see me? That's a big question and will derive how you set up your sales organization virtually. The average sales quota for an inside salesperson is just under $1 million. What does that tell you? You know, I don't know if you've ever done remote selling on the phone. It is really, really hard for most products. So think about that. But the shocking part is that if you have a sales quota and someone is never seeing a client, but they can drive just under $1 million in sales on average from Point Clear's study, that's pretty good. That tells you that on average in most industries that remote selling are completely inside sales, right? For some industries, you can be effective and get sales without ever being there. I still find that hard to believe, but the statistics show that that's what it is. In the United States, 47% are inside salespeople. So what we already know is almost 50% of companies in the country have gone to a complete inside sales model where people come to the office, they bang out phone calls every day, and they never see their clients. Employers hire 60% more sales professionals for remote positions than the average for other functions. I don't think that's a shocking one. I think everybody would agree with that. So the agenda quickly for this portion of the program. Here's some conceptual elements we'll go over for remote selling, some approaches that you can take if you go completely remote or have some inside salespeople or not, and some technology to support remote selling. So here are some conceptual elements that you need to consider. And this goes back to that onboarding and selection process for virtual salespeople that I talked about. I highly recommend those assessments that I talked about. You choose your assessment company, but get an assessment company where they're going to ask questions in a survey, and they're really good. PI is really good at this to determine the profile, not just what people say to you when you interview them, but really what's behind what they say and what's in their heart. If they're a non-motivated, non-self-starter, and all this kind of stuff, you need to run the other way. Inside salespeople or fully remote salespeople are a unique brand of people, right? They're not the people that you have to worry about that they're on the phone at 7. They're working weekends, they're working at night. Yeah, they may during the day go out to lunch, whatever they do, but they are working to get the job done, and you don't have to be on top of them. You don't need to manage people to say, and structure their day. You need to be on the phone at 8 o'clock every day and monitor on the CRM if they're making phone calls at 8 o'clock. You don't need to hire those people. Try to vet them out at the beginning. Next thing is limiting benefits, right? Here are the things that you hear from salespeople, and if inside salespeople or virtual salespeople that tell you they're probably not going to be successful. They're making excuses. The client says it's not good timing. They don't want to talk to me. I've called them 5 times. This is not a priority. Good virtual salespeople never say these things. They figure it out and they get to the bottom line. I would even submit that virtual salespeople, because they're not face-to-face, can't see body language, can't be there, can't form that relationship, are better salespeople. This is a hard thing to do. One warning I would give you is that if you decide to go virtual salespeople get burned up a lot faster than outside salespeople. It's hard to make 50, 60 calls a day and be really good at it. But the people who are good at it, you want to hold on to them forever. Let me just skip that one. All right. So staying motivated. So similar to whether they're in any sales organization, we talked about this. Make the goals visual. Make sure that you're doing the things that keep you motivated. Also, what some of these things are saying here is that these people are an interesting breed, right? So a lot of inside sales organizations, what they do is, they know when people on the other end are available. They do studies to find out when's the best time to call people. So the times that are best to call on average for most industries are 8 to 10 in the morning, and then about 1:30 to 3 or so in the afternoon. So they absolutely in those 3 or 4 hours are making calls. But in the other times, they're doing things to make sure they stay sharp when they call and also don't get bored when they call. So think of other things. I'm not saying that they should go out and go compete in a tennis match or something, or go play nine holes of golf. But a lot of people, what they do is they know the good call times and they have other activities during the day to keep themselves fresh. Understand that keeps them fresh, and that should be acceptable, or you should at least consider it. Adversity too. So inside salespeople, right? You have to make sure, even more than normal salespeople, is that you give them the light at the end of the tunnel. A lot of people doing this for 2 years or so get burned out. They want to do the next thing. Make sure you talk to them about where you want to be. What are your goals? We know this is tough. What's the next step for you? So they've got that next thing that they can do to keep them motivated where they are, and they don't lay down arms. I mentioned that statistic of 15 months of hiring and maybe a sales leader leaves. I mentioned another one now about 2 months. 2 months is not a long time for someone to think about, I'm going to be moving on. Okay. So if you have a 6-month sales cycle, when should opportunities enter the pipeline? Here's some remote selling approaches, right? And I'll quickly go through these because we just have a few more minutes. Number one, you want to make sure you avoid these mistakes. Don't create false pressure or urgency. What inside sales or virtual salespeople do, that they create quickly a relationship, a partnership. They understand the empathy. They find the pain points and they push pain points. They're not talking, I use the term, be the adult in the room. Make sure you're hiring people who handle this job or remote sell, that they are really good at connecting, making people feel comfortable, and finding their pain points. It's that simple when you sell remotely. So kind of the core philosophy, how can I help? These are questions, right? I can give you, if you send me an email, a list of inside sales questions that are not, hey, how you doing, right? Understand you got a problem. Inside sales and virtual salespeople ask these types of questions. How can I help? What is it that's your pain point? Those types of open-ended questions to get information. This. Okay. Also, for virtual and kind of inside selling, you need to use the tools at your disposal, whether it's LinkedIn, comment on blogs, share content. If you're going to sell remotely, LinkedIn, using tools like Sales Navigator or a tool called Duck Soup, which allows you to reach out to people on LinkedIn. Remote selling and inside sales isn't just banging out phone calls all day long. It's using LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, to get information out, having people respond, get them to your website. Studies show that if you get somebody to go to your website 2 to 3 times, they are a prospect, they're that interested. So if you have tools to do that, use LinkedIn to social sell. It's not just banging out phone calls. 78% of people use social media to outsell their peers. If you haven't set up your social media tools for your sales team, you need to do that. 84% of executives use social media to make a purchasing decision. So this is your clients or customers. They're looking at social media to help them make their decision. These are all good reasons to use social media as a way to drive sales in a virtual environment. So, what we're trying to do is using the baseball analogy, right? So if prospect is over here and you're going, through the bases to close, you don't want to skip second base here. What that means is don't jump over here. Make sure you don't steal second base. That analogy is don't think because you're virtual or you're an inside salesperson that you can skip steps in the sales process that are important for you to make sure you get over here. When you skip a step, here's what happens, right? So let's say this prospect enters the funnel as a 90-day prospect and they jump to they're going to close this month. If you haven't done all the work and done it better as a virtual or inside salesperson, What happens a lot here, which tells you that they're skipping steps, is that they say it's going to close this month, which is May, and then it doesn't close at all, or it closes, next June. That means they're skipping steps. Make them disciplined. The point here is keep them disciplined to your sales process and the steps they need to take, no matter if they're face-to-face or virtual. All right. When faced with uncertainty, be more process-driven and less results-driven. So this is a great quote. I've talked a lot about sales process. Make sure that you stick with the sales process. What that means is, if you don't know, is that within your CRM, you should have the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 steps that salespeople should take with the tools they need to be able to go down to that process. You should know the percentages that increase of closing when they follow that process. When you do that and have the analytics behind it, you can manage your business better and know when deals are going to come in. A big problem that I hear from sales executives is they say, Dennis, and I said this earlier in the presentation, our sales funnel is perhaps the greatest work of fiction that I've ever seen that I could get in the library. You don't want that. You want, as a sales executive and as a leader of a company, to look at that and say, I'm 90% sure when my sales team says it's here in the funnel, I know exactly how much that means to the bottom line, top line revenue, and the timing it's going to take to close. If you do it right and you do all these things, you're going to get the same results. So here's some just quick technology. Don't use the wrong technology. Make sure they're willing to use it. Here are some tools, right? So whether it's tools in the Zoom environment, that's all this is. Make sure that they're set up with the right stuff. The most frustrating thing that people have if they're selling directly to clients is, I can't hear you, you're on mute, I can't see you, that type of thing. Eliminate those problems. Get good technology. Here's some things that I've talked about, right, that you've seen, that you've probably used, that are tools. These are inexpensive things. Get good stuff. One of the most embarrassing things that I saw with a sales organization is they wanted Zoom and they got the free Zoom, and every meeting they had stopped at 40 minutes. You don't need that. Spend a little bit of money and get that stuff done, right? And then set expectations. Can you pick a time when you'll be sitting in front of your computer and you can turn on your webcam and we can become available, right? And then best practices before, set a reminder with the information to connect. This is all the devil in the details type of stuff. If you're going to be selling remotely and you're going to have meetings with people, remember, customers sometimes blow it off or they forget. I'll give you an example with this meeting today. How many reminders did you get from Catherine and Brooke about this meeting? You need to do the same thing with clients. Even though you send them an Outlook invite and they say, yes, they're busy. Make sure you know that you're going to have more canceled meetings. Make sure you remind them. And always, I don't like to log in 5 minutes before, log in 15 minutes before. Make sure your technology is working. Let's go on the next one here. Excuse me. I'm not going to give you all these tips because we got a few more minutes. So here's some of the tools. I don't know. I'm not going to go through all these, but these are examples of great tools to use that you can Google in a virtual environment. I will tell you this, that Hubspot, so this is a CRM company, but Hubspot has become more of a marketing tool. If you want a lot of great tools, and 2 of them I can send to you that I mentioned at the beginning, and you just send me a quick email, are Hubspot tools. HubSpot has a lot of great information for free if you log into their website. I'm a big fan of these guys. Their CRM is a great CRM, but a lot of great tools that you can have for your company for free that you can download and execute in a virtual environment. Great stuff. So we've got 15 minutes. So what I'd like to do is, number 1, any questions? And number 2, if we can answer those questions, like to break up into groups. And what I thought we could do here is that if you can, within your group, just come back with 1 or 2 virtual selling tips that you'd like to sell with the group that maybe I didn't go, or maybe you say these are not good ones, right? And you've got a couple that you've used for people to share. That would be great. And we can share it with the group. So Brooke, if you could divide people, first of all, any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Since there's only 7 of us, why don't we have people come on and make this our group and just discuss with you instead of going into breakout rooms? It's
Perfect.
going to be 2 people in a breakout room.
Okay, that's fine.
So if I know some of you might not be able to come on screen, but if you can come on screen, it'd be nice to have a conversation, I think, with the group that we have here now. So, hi, Jeff. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good.
How are you?
Good, thanks. Kevin and Jason had to step off, but I think he'll come back on. Hi, Jason.
Hi, Catherine.
And then Andrea's having coffee, might be a little casual, so I'm not sure who's gonna come on. So. Oh, she says, I'm not going to expose you all to me in the morning without makeup. So that you can talk to us, Andrea, because we know you like to chit chat.
I can start if you want me to start the discussion.
I'm here, I'm just not video.
Okay.
So I know for me personally, before I worked with Catherine, I did a lot of sponsorship stuff in person. And we worked with a lot of people all over the country, and we had workers in different countries too. And one of the things that we used to do is invite people to us in person. But once they went back home, we would send them little like thank you cards that had kind of like a little package. So that would help kind of close our deal after coming for the weekend to check out what we were doing. So it would be something like merchandise, like t-shirts or hats or things. And it would be something as simple as sending a Starbucks gift card too. So after that sort of in-person experience, I think that could still kind of apply to a virtual sales experience. If you're inviting someone to come have a meeting with you, you could still say thank you, send a thank you card with a $5 Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts gift card, as if you're like buying them an in-person coffee.
Yeah, I will. Brooke, that's great. I will tell you that you know these promo companies that do logos. So like if I wanted to get everybody a Yeti thing, I can get a logo put on it and they send it out. One of the number one motivational tools that I heard from people that were doing is they're using these these promo companies to send things virtually to their people, to let them know that they care about them, or send them to their clients. I talked about the dinners and the stuff like that, but it's a great way to reward them, motivate them, and also make them feel connected. So, I think that those things are good to do. Great ideas.
I'll throw out one that it actually comes from one of our vendors. They were doing kind of a lunch and learn, and typically they would probably either come into our office and bring food in or take us out to lunch. But during the pandemic, they gave everyone a Grubhub coupon that was good for that time period, that day only, but encouraged everyone to use that, have food delivered to the office, and then jump on to a Zoom call and do the training there. So yeah. I thought that was good use of money and engagement.
Yeah,
Curious,
Jeff.
was it distracting to have stuff delivered at different times, or was that an issue, or was everybody good about getting it delivered ahead of time?
Yeah, I can't remember the timing of everything, but yeah, we got the food beforehand, and so we were eating, and then the presentation happened.
We did that with our intern. So we met our intern remotely. And so we normally what we like to do is have a lunch or be in person, and we couldn't. So we live in rural parts of Maine, so we didn't have delivery. So but we said go out and get your sandwich and we'll pay for it, and then come back, and we had a discussion there.
Yeah, Jeff, I think that there's two things to keep your eye on the ball. And I think it was great comment. Is one, what are you doing to keep your own people motivated, right? And number two, how are you differentiating yourself in front of clients? So if you have a Zoom call with a client, you're having a presentation or whatever, sometimes you need to send them a little something. It differentiates you from the other competitors they're looking at, right? I mean, that to me is the other issue. Virtual isn't just about what you're doing with your own clients. What you're doing with your own people. It's what you're doing to grow sales with your potential clients or customers. How are you connecting with them? How are you making them feel that you're still there? It's important. It's a great point. Any other questions? If not, thank you, everybody. I'm going back to Tahiti with my one thumb, not my two thumbs. And
What did you do?
What's that?
What did you do?
Oh God, I think Jason's going to jump on me. So I, a week and a half ago, out for a mountain bike ride, got a flat about a mile in. You know, flipped my bike over in my center thing, right? They have all the tools now with the new bikes. So I couldn't get out my pump and I was prying it with my knife. Yeah, I know, Kevin, I know, rookie mistake, but you know, I've been mountain biking for 20 years and whatever. It wasn't just a few stitches, let's put it that way. So
How far out were you from medical assistance?
when I finally stopped swearing and paced around for a while in the woods and then put a tourniquet on my thumb, and then I realized that I really need to get out. So I called my wife and she met me at the trailhead. I was a mile and a half in. So, and I couldn't pump up my bike. So I had to put it on my shoulder and walk it out. You know what I mean? My wife almost passed out. She's like, "You're an idiot. Let's go to the emergency room." So I waited 3 hours. You know, if you go into an emergency room now and you go, oh my God, I mean, 9 people jump on you. If you have literally your thumb falling off, people go, you know, Dennis, you need to wait a little bit. So I sat there bonking after my ride. You know, after you ride, you know, it was awful. I was starving. I waited 3 hours. They finally stitched me up and then said, you got to come back in tomorrow for an operation. So it is what it is. I can still hold a beer though, Kevin. I'm good.
The other hand still works.
Exactly. So anyway, everybody, thank you so much for your time. Catherine, Brooke, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Jason, good to meet you. If you have any other questions, send me an email. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dennis.
We put the chat in, we put the survey in our chat link. So we'd love to hear thoughts from us about this program. It's how we build our programs. I would also like to thank Key Private Bank with Jason Myers. You want to say a few words for us?
No, it's, thanks, Dennis. Thanks, Catherine. This has been great. I've been in sales for 20 years and it's always good to learn something new, even after a couple decades. So appreciate it. And thanks for putting it on. So look forward to the next one.
Thanks for sponsoring it. So next Tuesday from noon to 12:45, Dennis is going to join us and we can have some more conversation about sales and sales tips. And Andrea is going to be our host for that. So we hope to see you. And we'll leave the meeting on for a little bit so you can go into the chat and do our survey. And thank you all very much. And if you need anything in the meantime, we're here for you. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.